As of late, I've been enjoying and seeking out work that expresses the horror of womanhood. There's a unique brutality to being a woman, and I think it's hard sometimes to conjure the right words to adequately describe that. And I think a lot of women struggle with that. So it's no wonder that Paloma Labour went viral online. The single clearly stirred a visceral reaction in women across the globe who really connected with the lyrics deeply. It's a war cry for current generations and a tribute to our sisters past, and I would love to discuss it with you today. Just quickly before we really jump into this, I wanted to say that when I refer to women or womanhood, I am inclusive of the full range of womanhood and the many ways that it's experienced. There will be mention of biological functions that are uniquely female when we're talking in scientific terms, but I just wanted to make it clear that I am by no means saying that you must experience these things to qualify as a woman. There will also be discussion of various types of abuse within relationships, so if that's a particularly sore subject for you, please feel free to click off, look after yourself, and I'll just see you next week. So who is Paloma? She is a 22-year-old singer-songwriter from the UK, originally from Derbyshire, which is a beautiful part of the country, just in the East Midlands. I imagine that her upbringing must have had a lot of influence on her songwriting because it all feels very grounded in nature and history. Her music can sit quite comfortably in an array of different genres, from indie to neo-folk to dark pop, and I think that versatility is what really appeals to such a large audience. It's clear from the references she makes and the visuals from her videos that she's very influenced by ancient stories, classical literature, and sort of that medieval aesthetic, and if you haven't guessed that by now, we like that over here. Labour was released on the 23rd of March this year, and it's clear it's made such a huge impact. Over 30 million streams on Spotify and almost 40,000 TikToks made with the sound. So why did it make such a big impact? I believe it's because of its ability to speak to so many women on so many different levels. Different traumas, different backgrounds, different cultural norms. But I think the one thing that links us all is this bubbling female rage that we start experiencing from the moment that we become cognizant of the boxes that women are put in society. Female rage has been quite a hot topic recently, and I think we're getting to a spot where we're very good at being raw and honest about it and not prettying it up in a way that makes men comfortable. And that's not being dismissive of the long history of women that have already been doing that. Obviously, for centuries, women have been incredibly open about these things, but I just think it's never been as prominent in popular media. So with that said, let's jump into the lyrics. Why are you hanging on so tight to the rope that I'm hanging from off this island? So Paris said she wanted to create a narrative around this couple that live on an island. I think it's safe to assume that this island is a metaphor for the relationship. Oftentimes women in these situations can feel very isolated. If we take a look at the single artwork, we can see that this rope is leading to a boat, which is her escape. I think this rope can take on a second meaning though. It's this symbolic noose that this relationship is hanging her from. She's clearly tired and not finding any fulfillment in her life or with her partner. So to hold on to this relationship would be like letting something inside you die. I see these first lines as her almost begging this man to look inside himself and figure out what role exactly she plays in his life. It's like she's saying, why are you holding on to this when clearly no one is happy here? There's no genuine love or respect from you because you wouldn't treat me this way. This was an escape plan. Carefully timed it, so let me go and dive into the waves below. I think these waves are symbolic of the lengths that she's willing to go to break out of this generational cycle that women have been in. You could say that she is jumping in the deep end and there's no safety net, but it's worth it. She's willing to take these risks to escape this current situation. The mention of this being an escape plan and it being carefully timed, I think adds an extra weight to this story. Oftentimes, women in abusive situations have to really think about when they're going to leave, who they speak to. They have to be really careful about these things. Otherwise, they could be putting themselves and children, if they have them, in more risk. Who tends the orchards? Who fixes up the gables? Emotional torture from the head of your high table. Who fetches the water from the Rocky Mountain spring and walk back down again to fill your words and their sharp sting? It's evident that this woman is not receiving any ounce of gratitude from this person. Despite toiling day in, day out, she is often met with criticism or abuse. I think the mentions of tasks that are not necessarily modern, like tending orchards or fetching water, is a particularly strong way to represent this like lineage of women that have been experiencing the same thing. You know, it's like a movie playing over and over again. On average, more than 3/4 of unpaid domestic care is done by women, and that number bumps up to 80% in emerging economies. And that's on top of the pressure to keep your partner happy emotionally and sexually fulfilled. This kind of work is often referred to as shadow labor, and I'm getting fucking tired. Is there any better way to put this? Just gets the point across nicely. I think this is what really got me hooked into the song, because it reminded me of a relationship that I just had to end, otherwise I was going to lose my mind. I felt this huge responsibility to ensure this guy's happiness, and it felt like nothing I ever did was right. I was walking on eggshells, and just mentally the pressure of that is draining. So I had to get out. The capillaries in my eyes are bursting. If our love died, would that be the worst thing? The capillaries could be referencing two different things, I suppose. The eyes are bloodshot because she's overworked, overtired. The other thing I sort of got from it, and it could be referencing the first verse, is the damage to the eyes that occurs when strangulation happens. I think this is one of those lines that can be interpreted to fit your own experience, and I think there's a real beauty in that kind of music where you can attach your own and secret meaning to it. For somebody I thought was my savior, you sure made me do a whole lot of labor. As young girls, we're brought up on fairy tales, and it's always, you know, the dashing prince swooping in and saving this girl, but that's where the story ends. We're lucky if we even get a peek at the wedding, let alone what happens once the honeymoon phase wears off. Quite often women are promised security and care from male partners, but the dynamic is so quick to change to where the women feel like they have to hold everything in the relationship together. This may be a reach, but I think it could also sort of be referring to religion, in the way that God is meant to be this savior, but women still pull the short straw when it comes to what is expected from them. The callous skin on my hands is cracking. If our love ends, would that be a bad thing? And the silence haunts our bedchamber. You make me do too much labor. This partnership is cold. There is no love there, and there's no attention or affection, and that's a horrible place to be. A loving partner should notice when you are broken. They should tend to things like bleeding hands, physical or metaphorical. Apologies from my tongue, never yours. Busy lapping from flowing cup and stabbing with your fork. I think in society, girls are often brought up still to be quiet and inoffensive, and we fall into these patterns of apologizing for even existing, and that's something I struggle with. Looking back at it now, it was pathetic, but in one relationship I had, I ended up apologizing for weeks for the fact that this guy cheated on me. I was apologizing for not being enough for him so that he felt he had to go out and hurt me. And I know for a fact that this is not a rare thing. Plenty of my friends have experienced the exact same. We get into this cycle of being apologetic for every tiny thing that we do, all the while feeling like we have to be a savior to our partners when they mess up in the worst ways. I know you're a smart man and weaponize the false incompetence, its dominance under a guise. This is so brilliant. I think we all know someone that does this, and it is one of the most infuriating things to experience. So weaponizing incompetence is a behavioral pattern that is most often displayed in men, but not always. And it's where a partner will pretend to be bad at something in attempts to shift that labor onto the other person. It's a form of gaslighting, and it is incredibly easy to fall victim to. It can be things like, oh, I don't know how to stack the dishwasher the way you do, and you just get angry with me when I do it. Or coming back from the supermarket with only half the things you asked them for. It's a way of getting us to resort to the old, you know, if you want a job done properly, do it yourself sort of mentality. And it's an incredibly easy way to fall into this dynamic where there's a very uneven share of the labour. If we had a daughter, I'd watch and could not save her. The emotional torture from the head of your high table. She'd do what you taught her, she'd meet the same cruel fate. So now I've got to run so I can undo this mistake. At least I've got to try. This isn't just about her individual situation. She is trying to break this generational cycle for the benefit of future generations. And that is a very noble task. Perhaps as well, she is doing it in tribute to all the women of the past that haven't been able to do that, or when they've attempted to, they've met very cruel fates. And then finally, we get to the part that captured the internet's attention and certainly lit a fire in women's hearts across the globe. I'm going to read it in full before we break it all down, just so you get the full effect. All day, every day, therapist, mother maid, nymph then a virgin, nurse then a servant. Just an appendage lived to attend him, so that he never lifts a finger. 24/7 baby machine, so he can live out his picket fence dreams. It's not an act of love if you make her, you make me do too much labour. So powerful, so in your face, just the perfect expression of female rage. When I was looking into Paris, I fell in love with this quote from her, and I'll read it out to you. All women should be permitted to feel rage and to feel something inconvenient and feel something overpowering that doesn't serve anyone else. Something inconvenient is such a great term here because as women, we really do sacrifice our own comfort as to not offend others, even, our fellow sisters. So let's break down this bridge. All day, every day, therapist, mother maid, nymph, then a virgin, nurse, then a servant. I think the bit that hit the hardest in this is the nymph, then a virgin. As women, we have this impossible task of trying to be two polar opposite things at the same time. We need to be sexually desirable and we need to perform in the bedroom, but we also cannot, under any circumstances, be a slut. It really reminds me of the Madonna whore complex, which is one of the most depressing psychoanalytical discoveries ever. It was identified by Sigmund Freud, and if we can count on that man for one thing, it's making us sad by science. It's a psychological complex that is developed in men who see women in two different boxes, either the saintly Madonna or as a debased prostitute. So they desire a sexual partner who has been degraded, and then therefore they cannot desire a respected partner. So there never will be any sort of fulfillment in a relationship, no matter what sort of side of that fence that you sit, according to this man. Just an appendage lived to attend him, so that he never lifts a finger. This woman is just an addition to his life. He only sees her for the benefit that it brings him. Her own dreams, her ambitions are not things that even cross his mind, because an appendage doesn't have a soul. It's just there to help him. I think lifting a finger could take on a double meaning here. Obviously, it's in reference to not picking up the slack in the house, but we also don't know how this man punishes this woman. He could be physically abusive, and so lifting a finger would be in reference to that. And I think this is another one of those cases where you can take the meaning that best fits your situation and make it your own. 24/7 baby machine, so he can live out his picket fence dreams. This is something that definitely riles me up. I personally don't want children, and I feel like I'm constantly bombarded with criticism about that. I think this is a thing that a lot of women struggle with. There's often a lot of guilt tripping that comes with this argument. Things like you're taking the opportunity for grandchildren away from your parents, or think about your sibling. Don't you want their kids to have cousins? And it can really leave you feeling like a vessel for other people's wants. Like, what about me? What about the one who all the labour will be put upon to keep you happy? Do I get a say in this? Even without children, there's still pressure to live these picket fenced lives for our partner. I once dated someone that I tried to break up with multiple times. And do you know what they said to me? Do you know the words that actually came out of their mouth? You do realise that you'd be ruining my dream for me, right? To marry the first girl I date. It's not an act of love if you make her, you make me do too much labour. This is just the perfect way to round out that message. It is truly a love letter to women, and I adore that. Paris is a genius with a long career ahead of her, and I'm really excited to see where she takes this. I would absolutely love to know if you took anything else from this song, or if you just want to expand on something that's been mentioned. I seem to have attracted a lovely little community of people that are incredible, intelligent thinkers, and I love seeing all these little conversations start sprouting in the comments. It's so nice. So I think it'd be great if we can carry on. Just a little side note, I'm thinking of doing a Q&A video. So if you have any questions for me at all, leave them down below and I might film them. If we haven't met before, hi, I'm Honor. This is my little corner of the internet. If you enjoyed this, I would love to have you as part of our little gang. It's a really nice place. Feel free to subscribe if you want to. I hope you all have a lovely day and a lovely week, and I will see you next Friday. Goodbye.